Hey everybody, I'd like to welcome you to the second tutorial video. Last week we looked at characters and animals and basic drawing using what we called the Marvel method. That was just combining different circles and shapes, ovals, in order to build your skeleton for your characters. We also talked a little bit about using design features, attributes to your character such as clothing, the differences between maybe a character that is elderly character versus a younger character, and then also using the Marvel method to draw various animals and things of that nature. This week we're going to be continuing on building on this concept with setting. Now today's session, which is the week 3 session, writing with pictures part 2, we introduced setting. So if you haven't watched that video yet, I encourage you to go ahead, go back, watch week 3, part 2 of writing with pictures, which will explain setting and how setting is used. Now, before we get started with the actual drawing, let's do a little bit of an overview again. Setting is the background to your story. It's where your story takes place. Location is one way to look at it. Setting can vary from a very broad range, such as desert, space, under the sea, in a house, that kind of thing. Or you can narrow that down into more specific settings, such as in a bedroom of a home, on the moon that's in space, right? Or let's say on a coral reef in the ocean, and so on and so forth. One thing about your story that you have to keep in mind while constructing your storyboard is using setting, or the background, within your various illustrations. Now, depending on what type of template you've chosen, which we'll go over those again, picture book, chapter book, graphic novel, or comic book, how you depict the setting is going to be different. Today I talked about setting up your storyboard with the setting and the differences in between graphic novel or comic book and a picture book or a chapter book. We talked about Maurice Sendak, Where the Wild Things Are. We referenced E.B. White's Charlotte's Web. I would also like for you on your own to look up some of Frank Miller's work, such as The Dark Knight Returns. He has also written a few more various graphic novels of his own, but in particular his choice in how he sets up the setting in his comics. He's primarily an inker, but the work that he does and how he sets up his setting is very interesting. If you're a fan of comics and you read a lot of comics, you understand that not in every panel, which is the box that the story takes place in, do you have to depict the setting. So you could introduce the setting in the first few panels. Let's use Batman as a reference. You can introduce the setting. We could say that it is in the Batcave, okay? And then from there, when you show various characters on through the story, once you establish the setting in the first couple panels, you don't have to necessarily draw the setting in every panel onward. Maybe not as much detail about the setting. Just be sure to establish where your characters are and in the place they're interacting, okay? Now I want to begin and talk a little bit today about perspective. Perspective is just this big word that talks about the angle of which the image appears to you, okay? And we're going to be drawing a couple of little examples here to help show you and explain what perspective is. You already know what it is, and I know we're covering a broad range of grades here. We're covering grades 3rd grade all the way up to 12th grade. So forgive me if some of this stuff seems a little, repetitive, but it's important in order for us to explain these more advanced concepts to the younger grades, okay? So here we have a circle on the screen. Now this circle represents the center point of the picture plane. So what that means is when you're standing, if you were standing here, and I guess you are looking at it, so you can see the center point of this picture. Now I'm going to use this as an example, which is kind of a commonly used example, but let's draw a straight line going through this circle here, okay? Now again, I'm drawing with a stylus. This is a Wacom tablet, or Wacom tablet. I don't know the pronunciation, but this is a little bit hard to make straight lines. I can make straighter lines if we were drawing with pencil on paper, so bear with me. Some of these might be a little off, but just bear with me, okay? So I want you to imagine you're standing in the desert, and you're looking off into the horizon, okay? This is the horizon off in the distance. Now, this red circle is just there to show you where your center line is, okay? So then what I'm going to do, let's imagine that you're standing on railroad tracks. Okay, so here's the railroad tracks. And we'll draw some lines in between here to show that there are tracks going all the way down into the horizon. And as the tracks go further off into the distance, notice how these lines get closer and closer together, right? All right. Now, I'm also going to draw here beside of the tracks, going off into the distance, telephone or power lines, okay? So we'll draw one every so often. Notice how these get closer together as they go off into the distance. Okay, there we go. Let's go ahead and add at the top of these a little more detail so you can see what I mean. Now you notice what's happened here, right? This is your center of your perspective. You have the telephone lines that are going off into the distance. And you can tell by just looking at this image that everything is drawn into this center point right here. If you notice, and I'll go ahead and grab another color to show you. Look at the angle of the lines, or the line that follows the power lines. See how they go straight down into the circle. Look at the line at the bottom of the power lines, how they seem to go into the circle. And even the railroad tracks. So if you were to draw something on this side, you'd draw a line coming out, and you could make this the topmost portion of what you're drawing. This is basically to help you understand perspective. And there's a couple more examples that I want to work on real fast and show you again, okay? Now with this one, we're going to do something a little different here. The first thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to create 2 points of perspective, okay? And I can show you what I mean by that. We're going to take one of these points of perspective and we're going to put it way over here. I'm going to grab the other one and I'm going to move it way over here, okay? There we go. I'll move it in a little bit more. There we go. All right, so now we have 2 points of perspective. This might be a little confusing right now, but once we start drawing, you'll see what I mean and how this is used, okay? Now the best way to kind of explain how this works is, imagine that these 2 lines intersect. Let's say you're standing on a street corner, for instance. So we'll draw this shape, come all the way down here, and then draw it going off into the distance here. Okay, this is a street corner that you're looking at from across the street, okay? So if this was a sidewalk, and this area right here is the road, it would look something like this. The sidewalk would go off into the distance, and you notice how it gets closer together with the other line as it goes off into the distance, like that. Same thing with this side. It goes off into the distance, and it starts getting closer, closer, closer together, right? Okay, let's put a building here to kind of help explain this a little bit more. We'll draw a straight line coming straight down. Now this is the corner of the building facing you, right here. All right. So if I'm going to draw more of this building on both sides, and then adjoining buildings going down the street, you can imagine a little bit how that would look. I'll go ahead and grab the black line and show you. All of the lines that come out of here, okay, are coming out at angles, right? So you can imagine it sort of like that. And the same goes for this side too, okay? So when we add the detail at the top, these angles are going to go down into the perspective. Same as the railroad tracks, right? So when I go to draw the angles of the top of the building, it's going to go down into, oops, let me see. There we go. It's going to go down into this perspective line here. Okay, so it's something like this right here. So there's the 2 corners of the building. We can add the lines coming straight down. We can add another building coming out here. And you notice how we're following this line all the time. Okay, you have another building there. This could be a little bit of a taller building maybe. This would actually go down into the, like this. So, and you can see how this is set up. What this does is it breaks up what we call the picture plane. Okay, and the picture plane is all of the visible image on the surface of whatever it is you're looking at. So if you're looking at a chapter book or a picture book, the picture plane is the image itself. The perspective is dealing with angles. And the reason this is important has to deal with breaking up what's a little bit of the, I guess to make it more lively and entertaining to read, to look at. I used the example earlier today. Let's say your setting of your story takes place inside of a school. Let's say inside of a classroom, okay? On every single page of your book, you're drawing the same classroom. You could imagine how incredibly boring it would be to show the same angle or the same perspective over and over and over again. Think of the movies. Think of your favorite animated movie or film, okay? Whenever the director of photography chooses to place the camera angle or perspective, they do that very deliberately. They make those decisions taking into account how it'll appear and what perspective it will give the viewer. Sometimes, if you notice in film, the angle of the camera or the perspective may be the top of a corner of a room looking down. It may be at the bottom on the floor looking up. It may start off very wide range shot showing an entire neighborhood, then zooming in to only one home, okay? Now we're a little bit limited with sequential art, printed sequential art, because we don't have all these frames going at 2460 per second. We have one frame pretty much per page. So try to use a lot of creativity with your perspective on every page, especially if your setting takes place in the same location on every page, okay? I'm going to give another example real fast of perspective. We're going to go ahead and get rid of what we've done here. I'm going to get rid of one of these red dots. I want you to kind of guess with this one, where does the perspective happen here, okay? All right, so let's start out. What I'm going to do is I'm going to draw a line going in to the center somewhere here. You can almost imagine now where the perspective or where the center of this perspective is going to be. It may throw you off a little bit though. Hopefully not. Going up this way and going up that way, right? Okay, so this is a hallway. So at the end of this hallway we can add a door maybe here, right? We'll cap this off with the sides. Now let's go ahead and add lines going up that represent other doors. Maybe this is a hotel or something of the like, okay? Now the lines, see how crooked that is? So just bear with me on that. Now the top of the door here, if I were to draw the line going down like this, you see how odd that looks? That does not work at all, does it? Okay? So these top lines and these bottom lines all come out from a center point. So you can imagine if this was our center point, and it is right here, you've got these lines that are going to be coming out from here, going in all different angles, okay? All around. So if you're drawing a line up here that's close to this, it will not be the same angle as this, but it'll be pretty close. So it might be up like that right there, and then down again. Okay, same over here. So you see how these lines are following how the lines come out of the center point here, isn't it? And this might be a little complex for some of you. It's okay. Basically, if you just always remember to take into account how your angle affects what you're seeing, you'll be okay. So here we have a hallway, just a general shape. All right. We'll go ahead and get rid of this, and what we'll do now is we're going to go on into using your setting in different examples. Now with this example here, I'm going to use what's called interior setting. So this is all inside of, everything going to be taking place here takes place inside of a house, let's say, okay? All right, let's say my story takes place in a living room. So when you go to set up the setting for a living room, you as the director, the writer, the creator, you get to decide how this living room is going to appear on your page. Okay? Think about the different elements that you're going to use in your living room. Remember the Marvel method that we used before. So let's say I'm going to draw a character sitting over here on a chair, okay, reading a newspaper. All right, so there we go. There's a newspaper. There's his other hand. So if he's in a living room and he's reading a newspaper, maybe I could have his legs crossed, okay, and we could put him in a chair, right? Often you associate chairs with living rooms, different types of chairs and stuff. I'm not going to put a lot of detail in these drawings so that you could get an idea. It's more about the setting. So let's put him in a chair. Now look at the angle at the bottom of the chair. You see where the angle went off to? It's going this way. All right? Okay, so we'll finish out the chair here, bring it around the back, something like this right here. Okay? So this line is important because once you've drawn one line that shows where the perspective is, you have to kind of match everything up along those lines, okay? So over here I'm going to draw another chair, and we'll make this one come out like this. Draw the sofa here that's in the cushion, the back of the chair coming down. Now where do you think the lines will be here? It's kind of important just to remember where your perspective is with every single part of your setting, okay? All right, so see the angles here, how they're kind of off a little bit. So what I'll do is I'll go back and kind of change that around a little bit. When you're off on your angles, it really affects everything with the picture, and that's a great example right there. So adjust these up just a little bit more, make it look a little better. There we go. Okay. So what we'll draw then, we'll draw a table maybe. It's over here on the side. All right, so let's go ahead and add a table in here. Think about all the different things you can add to your setting. It's completely up to you. It could be limitless as to all the different things you place in your setting. But try to think of things that match up to what the setting is. If it's a living room, you may have things like tables, chairs, stuff like that. If you were to draw, let's say a little kiddie pool or swimming pool in the middle of the living room, it might be a little weird, unless it's part of your story. But all right, so in the background here, then we can also add a wall and maybe a divider going into the other part of the house here, right? And then a hallway running behind here, and a door leading into the kitchen area maybe. In the kitchen area we may have where the sink is here, right? The cabinets coming down, another line in the back, and maybe a wall here. So as you can see, perspective can really go deep into a picture, and you can even change perspective as you go along, okay? All right, another example here for you. This is going to be a kitchen scene. Now I've noticed a lot of students, what happens is when you start to draw tables or any type of structures or parts to your drawing, I noticed that a lot of you will draw something like this right here basically. Your table will be, say like here's my table, here's a flower pot on my table, okay, and here's the wall behind my table, okay, and then here's a stove in the corner. Right, okay, stove with the door, that kind of thing. Here's a countertop, here's cabinets, here's a window, and this is fine. This is a kitchen, I guess, if you were to imagine it so. But what I want you to do is kind of take another look at this and try to look at it in a different way. Okay, all right, so. We'll go ahead and get rid of what we've done here. We'll start fresh, okay? All right. I'm going to draw a setting for a kitchen, and I want you to kind of see what I'm doing here and see how different it looks from the other setting, okay? So here I have the top of my table. Now, the legs of my table, I want to see a little bit of the top of this table here, okay? So I'm going to draw the top of the table coming across here. All right, now since I've shown the top of this table, that means that the legs below are not going to be equal length. So you can see the top of that table. That means this table is at an angle. So the leg of the table might be just this long in the back, okay? And only this long on this side too. You see what I mean? Because you're looking at it from a different angle. Same thing goes for maybe the pot in the top of the table. So you have a bowl here or a pot, okay? You may have this line coming around back to show a little bit of the top of the pot here, and then your plant could be at the top of this, okay? All right, so let's go over here now. Let's do the stove. I'm going to draw my stove at a little bit of a different angle than what we did earlier, okay? Notice these lines again. See how they come farther apart as we grow out towards the viewer. We've got this angle on top of the table. We have to follow those same lines for your stove going inward, just like these have, okay? All right, so we'll draw the top of the stove here. Again, I'm following the line for perspective here, right? Come down like this. Now notice what I'm doing. I'm drawing it out. It's almost, I heard one student once say, well, you know, it looks kind of 3D. And that's a really good way to put it. It does look a little three-dimensional. You can see different sides of it. It doesn't look flat, okay? You could think of it like that if you want. That's perfectly fine. All right, so now we have maybe a stove here. Put some burners on the top of it. Okay, now what I'm going to do in the background here is draw a refrigerator, but the refrigerator I'm going to draw facing the viewer, okay? And again, I'm drawing with this stylus. It makes it a little different to draw with. I really like drawing with the stylus. I love this tablet I'm using. I wish I had one. But it is different than paper for sure, okay? All right, so now we have the bottom of the refrigerator. We'll run this over to about right here. Let's keep on going with it. That way we can move on and show you some more stuff. The window. Put some curtains on here maybe. So if this setting takes place in a kitchen, I'm adding things that you would typically see in a kitchen, right? And this is all part of building your story. You may say something as simple in your story as, you know, Alice walked down to have her cereal before school in the morning. All right. Now, with that, you don't mention the kitchen any, right? But whenever you start to draw your story and you put these details in, you want to add things like what you typically would see in a kitchen, right? So that's one example on how to create your kitchen using perspective. Okay, we're going to go ahead now and we're going to jump ahead and take a look at another example. Here what we're going to do, we're going to use what's known as exterior. And this is going to be kind of your general setting like we talked about earlier. You may have the moon and then you may also have a specific location like a crater on the moon. So for general location, we're going to be talking about pretty broad subject. So we'll do the moon first since we're talking about it. So I'm going to put a line down the page right here. And all this line is going to represent is the differences between, the differences between the two types of perspective we're going to use to create this picture. So there's our line, okay? All right, so let's grab our brush. We're going to go back over here. Now here's example A, we'll call it. And example B, right? Okay. For example A, I'm going to draw the moon surface and its craters kind of going like this, coming down. Okay, something like that. And then I'm going to go back and add craters and things to the moon. So this is one way to do it. You want to add stars out here, right? Planets and things. So you could tell that this is taking place, on some type of a lunar surface, right? You can add a little bit of detail, right? So this is one way to do it. Now in this version, I'm going to get a little more specific than this. We're going to be doing basically the same thing, but we're going to put more detail. For instance, what we could do is draw a rock face coming down. There are small types of mountain, not really mountains, but build up on the surface of the moon. It's not all flat. There are different types of formations that look something similar to this on the surface of the moon. So here we have an example for maybe a rock or something that's built up on the moon, okay? All right, so then back here we could start going across. We could draw the crater standing out a little bit more. Draw the inside of the crater maybe. Keep on going this way. Once we get over here, we can start adding more of the buildup. Kind of resembles maybe a hill or a small hill. We put some shadow in there. Something like this. Okay? And then we can also add some more craters. More surface craters going on. We may add a couple more rocks over here. Something to show just more detail to the setting. So how you choose to build your setting really matters a lot. It's okay to do a simple version like this, or you could do a little bit more complex. And so out here we could put the Earth. I know that's not a very good circle, but that's okay. We can draw the continents on the Earth coming down. Put Greenland in there. Part of some Europe. There we go. So then we could draw stars. Now you could see the difference between this version and this version. This is just more detailed. The setting has it's more specific to the setting. We're looking maybe at this one location. So where this would be looking at the entire surface of the moon over here, all right? In this perspective, we could zoom in more. We may even put, like, I don't know, a little alien guy here or something. Maybe he's getting ready to mine for some mineral, right? you get the picture. Okay. We're going to do another example here, but with this one, what we're going to do, we're actually going to use more of it's a general location. We're going to use the jungle, though, and kind of give you an example of that one, okay? All right, so go ahead and, I should have left my line up there, but that's okay. We'll add another one real fast. Okay, so here we go. Now, let's say your story has characters in it. Maybe there's monkeys, okay? I'm going to go ahead and draw this out for you. We'll draw a little monkey setting here. Now, monkeys sometimes, they're found in jungles, right? So we can put him sort of hanging out here. And we have to build the setting up around him, okay? So let's put him here. Maybe he's got his arms hanging down like this. The other arm coming out. Like that. We'll draw his legs coming down. We'll have him sitting on a tree, okay? All right. His tail coming up. Something like that. Okay. You could tell that's sort of a monkey, right? All right, so we could draw the tree limb coming out. Now, jungle settings have a lot of foliage or a lot of growth, green growth and things. We have ferns, trees, vines, flowers. There's a lot going on in the jungle. So if your story was to take place in a jungle, you may want to do a little research on what sorts of things you find in a jungle. Today I talked a lot about research, and it's really important that you do that. Research is very important with this kind of stuff. You need to know, what do you find typically in a jungle? What are the things you would see if you were to visit a jungle? You use those in your story then to help create your setting. So here we have a tree, got the little monkey sitting in the tree. We may add another rope hanging up here, or a vine, coming down like this. We'll add some limbs, some tree limbs, or leaves, coming out. So you may have something just as general as this. Maybe put a little bit of stuff behind him here to show that there's more foliage or trees or plant life going on, okay? So this could be one way to draw your jungle. And this is with the character included. So over here on this side, I'm going to do another example here, okay? You may start out with drawing ferns or plant life that's very close up to the picture plane, which is basically, like I said, the surface in which your images are going to appear on the page, okay? The closer up on the picture plane that you draw things, they're going to appear larger, of course, right? And with this, you could create interesting effects to your setting. And again, you really need to research what sort of things do you see growing in a forest and use that. You may not have cactus in this, for instance, or cacti growing in a jungle setting. But all right, so we'll draw some different types of plant life out here, and we'll draw maybe a path going off into the jungle. All right, there we go. I don't know if anyone's familiar with Bob Ross, but he was a painter. He used to do these television shows when I was younger on PBS, and I used to watch him. He had this really big beard, and he would always say things like, or draw a happy little tree. I don't know why he always called trees happy, but it's okay. So we're going to add a couple happy trees ourselves here. So here we have some more foliage or plant life, right? There's a lot of plant life in the jungle. So here's an example of maybe how you could do that. So we have the path coming down here. Okay, here's all the images. This is the front of your picture plane up close. When you get back here in this area, that's farther back in the picture plane. Same as over here. Okay, your monkey and the tree here, that's up close on the picture plane, but when you get further out, notice there's less detail, okay? When things appear farther back in the picture plane, which is, where you farther off in the distance, if you will, those things do not have to be as detailed as things appear up close. Now, I could add a ton more detail to this, but, for time reasons, we're moving along, okay? All right, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the hallway here. Remember that. Remember the perspective we talked about. We're going to use this again right now. And with this particular example, we're going to show you, or I'm going to show you, how your setting, how to use your setting if you are drawing the same setting over and over, especially if your setting changes, okay? If your setting changes a little bit. Now, it'll make more sense after I get started here, okay? All right, let me bring this down just a little bit so you can see. There we go. What I mean by that is, let's say, for instance, that you have a story on, think of Jack and the Beanstalk. There we go. That's a good example. Now, Jack and the Beanstalk takes place around a small cottage. Yes, there's a lot more going on in that story. When he goes to town, he trades the cow for beans and everything. But when the beanstalk grows, the setting changes, doesn't it? It grows all the way up into the heavens and stuff. So let's take that into consideration as we're doing this. I'm going to draw a farm, and I'm going to do a very kind of a very sketched version of it. It's going to be fairly quick here for time reasons, okay? All right, so first we're going to go ahead and add this little farmer guy. Put a little hat on him. Like I said, it's not going to be detailed. I'm just going to really fast. Here's our little farmer. Got his overalls. And let's say he's looking at the ground And all of this setting is going to be taking place surrounding this little garden. And the garden is going to be drawn right here. He's already marked off where the garden's going to be. Back here is just maybe some tree line coming out here, and then here's the barn, right? We'll draw it in the corner. And like I said, I'm not going to be using a whole lot of detail with this. We're just going to move along, okay? So here he is looking at the garden, all right? Now, I'm going to draw the same exact setting on this one, but I'm going to draw him doing something a little different. I'm going to draw him actually planting some seeds. So, drawing the garden coming down again, same thing as before. All right, we'll go ahead and add him in here, but this time we'll have him putting some seed in the ground. Okay? He's got his overalls. Let's have him holding a bag of seed or fertilizer maybe. Right here. All right, he's got the fertilizer. He's standing there and the fertilizer's coming out on the ground. We can already make it so that he's maybe he's tilled the ground a little bit. We can draw these lines going in the dirt here to show that he's been working on planting his garden. Okay. And again, we'll show the tree line in the background coming over, stopping right here, and we'll draw the barn again. Okay. There we go. Now, all right, so now let's go down to the bottom panel here, and what we're going to do with this one, we're going to advance on that a little bit more. We're going to draw the garden once again, stop about right there, and we're going to have him this time actually planting the seeds, because we had the fertilizer in the first one there. So with this one, let's have him actually planting the seeds, okay? So he's got his cup of seeds out, and he's pouring it into the ground here. All right. We'll show that he's, like, once again, tilled the ground. I guess you'd put fertilizer on, before you plant the seeds, I guess, maybe in some cases. Not really sure. I've only grown tomatoes. Anyway, so we've got the ground tilled, and draw our tree line, draw our barn, once again. All right, and in the last one, what we're going to do is we're going to draw our farmer, and we're going to draw him looking at his garden. He's happy. The garden has produced some vegetables. Okay, we could draw him over here with his hat and his bill of his hat here like this, his ears. Let's draw him smiling. He's happy. He's going to have some good food. There's his overalls again. Alright, and then here we can show how the garden is growing. Now notice how simple my approach here is. I'm not adding a whole lot of detail. This doesn't look like anything you'd find in Marvel Comics. Of course, I'm rushing to show you how to do these things, for one. But number two, you may not want to draw like Marvel or DC. You may want to create your own type of style. Think of the Diary of a Wimpy Kid. Those books do not look like anything you typically find in a Disney movie. Okay? It's not about, like I said before and all along, it's not about your ability to draw like those really big, well-known companies and such, or artists from those companies, but it's about your ability to tell a story, okay? And combining pictures with words to do that. That's the goal, okay? So here we go. Now I want you to take a look at this with all of these together. You see how this looks? we have the farmer here looking at the ground. The setting doesn't change in any picture except for the garden, right? I mean, there's variations. That barn doesn't look exactly like the others, but you get the idea, though. The only thing that's changed in this picture has been the garden that is growing. So this is another way to use setting in your story, okay? All right, so I hope these examples have helped you in some way to understand how perspective works with your setting. Also, keep in mind that there'll be additional resources placed on the art gallery on the Holler.org right here where you're searching. Go ahead and look under the documents tab, the forums tab, and you'll see videos. There's a lot of stuff that's going to be provided there to help you. Additional links maybe for examples and things of that nature. I want you to keep in mind that you should go back and watch videos over again. After this week, after week 3, going into week 4, you should have your storyboard completed. You should have your characters designed, your backstories, who your character is. You don't have to go as in-depth to have a backstory, but today I met with students at Belfry High School, and I was amazed. Those students had a backstory for the characters. They chose what they look like, their clothing, their accessories, and they wrote out in descriptions their attitude, their demeanor, what they like, they don't like. They had their antagonists, they had their hero, all these cool things. Really, really well thought out. And I know that there's a ton of students doing that out there. And I want you to share your work on the Holler right here. This is supposed to be a community. Now, this is groundbreaking in the sense that we're using the link to match up to 18 counties. There's a lot of students participating in this program. It's groundbreaking because there's not a lot of school districts catching on to this. But out west, the sequential art movement or the writing with pictures, this is growing more and more because it really is a great tool to get students interested in learning more about creative writing, language arts, and using pictures in relation to words to tell a story, okay? This is your community. If we can build this and grow this, I want to see your work out there more for the students. It's about you. It's not about me. It's not about anything here but you expressing your ideas, your thoughts, in this form. I'm excited to see what you come up with, and I really hope you continue to take this seriously and just have fun more than anything. And before we go today, I'm going to do my best. Just one more thing here. I'm going to show you the Marvel method, and we're going to draw Olaf. So if you survive through this entire video, we're going to draw Olaf together with this stylus, which is going to be a little difficult maybe. So I don't know how Olaf is going to look at the end. So here we go. This is kind of a treat. So you draw along with me here, and I'll show you how Disney uses the Marvel method to draw Olaf. Okay? First thing I want you to do, remember I'm drawing in blue. When I'm drawing in blue, that's a pencil. Okay? So you're going to draw a circle. There's our circle. Okay, the next thing I want you to do is draw another circle right about here. And you could go back, remember when you're finished, and what you do is you erase the lines you don't need and you trace over the ones you want to keep, okay? We'll draw another circle here, another circle here. Now that looks nothing like Olaf yet, does it? But what happens is when we start to work up here at the top, things come together a little better, okay? So far we have 4 circles that you should have. Now this next shape is a little different. You're going to draw a oval type shape right up here, about right there. You're going to connect it down into the body, okay? Sort of like that. Now this is the Marvel method. It's used by, like I said, Disney and all sorts of other artists to create their characters. So go ahead and add this piece right here below the oval, and then you're going to draw the mouth in here. See how that works? There's his mouth. There's his tooth. It's going to go up and under. All right, so I'm going to zoom in just a little bit more, and we're going to work on his face here. So I probably should have drawn this a little larger for you, but that's okay. So up at the top here, we're going to draw this piece coming up like this, up to the top and then back down. Okay, Olaf's eyes are in the middle here, of course. right, and now we can draw the little limbs coming out for his hair. And we can use the side here for his arms. So his arms come out. Now they're twigs, so I could do a little bit more detail on this if we could, but not much time. Something like this, okay. All right, and we'll go ahead and color this in. So what I would do from here is go back with my pen and I would mark over the lines I wanted to keep, and I would get rid of the lines I didn't want to keep, okay? So his nose would be about right here, something like that going out. All right. That kind of looks like Olaf. His head might be a little too big, but that's okay. Or his head is too small, or his body's too big. Something's going on with him, but that's okay. So we'll go ahead and add a circle for the coal, another circle for the coal, and one more. So there we go, using the Marvel method to draw Olaf. And you can see how Disney's kind of used this method, and you can break any drawing down using the Marvel method, okay? Circles and shapes. I hope you had a really good time this tutorial. Thank you so much for watching the entire thing. We're going to have some more tutorials as we go along. Good luck in creating, and I'll see you in the classroom.